afternoon all, and welcome to the council meeting on the 1st of December, also the first day of summer. Wouldn't think so today outside, but it is. Welcome to the councillors, the staff, the Methven Community Board members, two attending, public members of the public is in here, and people who are listening in from home, and also the media. I'll call for apologies, but I think we're all here. Extraordinary business, and an item for extraordinary business, which is the demolition of the Hines and Rakaya swimming pool changing rooms. And we'll take that as the first item of business, as long as we get a mover and a seconder. And the reason for urgency is so the pools can be operational this summer. Councillor McMillan, move. Councillor Wilson, seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of interest. None have been given to me before the meeting, so there is none. We'll go to confirmation of minutes on page, item number 4, which is page 3. Any alterations or additions on page 3 or 4? 5, 6, 7, 8. Can I have a move and a second at the minutes of the 17th of November council meeting be taken as read and confirmed? Councillor Brown, Councillor Latham, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Keep carried. On page 8, we have the council minutes. Someone would like to move that we receive those minutes? Councillor Lovett, Councillor Rawlinson, moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. No discussion on them. No. Let's move over to, this will be, Councillor.
Just with regards to the youth council, I note now that the advertisements have gone out to kids to apply for next year's youth council. Is there? I recall last year I supported a person to go onto the youth council, and they didn't get an RSVP for about 3 months until the closing. Has there been some discussion around that in a more responsive way of acknowledging children, young people that have applied?
Just to finish.
Thank you, Mayor Neil. Just to answer the councillor's question, we took on board the comments that Councillor Cameron had raised last year, and we're going to be putting instructions to staff to reply within a day or two that they've received the application and pending, pending the outcome.
Item doesn't have a number, but it's the demolition, the extraordinary business item, demolition of the Rakaya and Hines pool changing rooms. And you councillors, you'll have the report, which was obviously an extraordinary item. And Mr. Fabish is here to talk to it. Steve, is there anything further to add to your report?
Just through the mayor, the only thing I wanted to highlight to council was the earthquake assessments that we undertook came out of the recommendations of the independent audit that we did on all of our district swimming pools, the rural pools, earlier this year, and that was one of the actions that they had recommended. We undertook the recommendation, had the seismic surveys done, and the results of those surveys is really based in this report, highlighting the need for those 2 changing rooms to be demolished virtually immediately, certainly before this summer season can progress. We've been working with the committees all the way through the process, so those swimming pool committees are fully up to speed. The issue now is actually the availability of funds to remove those buildings.
Going forward, are they requiring new changing rooms to be replaced at some stage, or just a toilet, or what are they looking at go forward?
So going forward, they will definitely need new changing rooms. They're talking with the committees. There is a feel that, look, we can work temporarily while we look at a long-term solution for the next 2 seasons, but long-term we will have to work with the committee issues on that. In saying that, though, we did say to all of the committees that the audit showed a number of improvements, and that collectively all of the swimming pool committees will work with staff through council to look at long-term solutions for a number of those issues, and they could be joint funding applications to external providers, etc.
Okay. Question time, councillors. Any questions, Mr. Fabish? Diane? Sorry, Lynette, rather.
Just looking at the buildings, the state of the buildings, you know, it's disappointing to see those photos that the disrepair they are, that, you know, no maintenance has been obviously done on the structural side of it for years, but going forward, will there be a workshop on the future? Because some of the pools, and I think it's the Rakai one, it's leaking underneath, and whether it gets replaced or how they're going to fix that, because there's no point in putting new changing rooms there if the pools, you know, we kind of need to look at the bigger picture in some of these areas going forward.
There is a recommendations in that audit, which included getting seismic surveys of three pool changing rooms. We've done that, and the independent and the seismic testing has come out for the two pools, saying that they're well below the new building standard. So we are certainly using that independent audit as a basis for going forward.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a question, Steve. In the financial implications on page 4, you've got the price of the toilets have been $250, but then up in point 10, supply of portable. Oh, sorry, I've read that wrong. Supply of portable. So the portaloos will just be $250, but if they wanted to get changing rooms, that would be $2,000 for the 2 months. And would that be at the cost of the pool committees, or added to the cost of council if we decided?
Again, through the mayor, good question, and that was an option that we put to the committees: is what do we basically need for you to operate your pool? And they said we need to have portaloos. I said, what about changing rooms? They said no, they would work with their communities about changing at home, going to the pool, and changing at home again, and the schools would operate under that. I've included that in there so that if there was a decision to put portable changing rooms, high abdon on site, it would be an additional couple of $1,000. But the committees are saying we can run with this season without them.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note we've got the NBS ratings for Hines and Rakai changing rooms. What was the NBS rating for Tynwald, and how much comfort have we got for that changing rooms?
Okay, I've got on my desk over there, I'll just get Paul to bring that folder across. The work that had to be done in Tynwald was, there was some work to be done on the western wall that faces into the playground, which has to be replaced at a cost. But to lower that risk through the risk assessment, we're able to actually put temporary fencing and signing 3.5 metres out. That'll mitigate that and give us give the reserve board a bit of breathing space. The other work that's needed is inside the plant room of the facility, where one of the walls has to have additional bracing and tying it back in, and then it's good to go. So that work's underway now, but that's not where public go. The changing rooms are fine. The rating on the office and the changing rooms is 40%, and the pool plant room currently at 10%. But with the works we're going to do, we'll make it safe enough for staff to enter into it. They're actually safe to enter into it now, but not go against the eastern wall, which there is no equipment there. But that work's underway.
Councillor Alderson.
Thank you, and I've got a question, but just firstly for Councillor Falloon's information, the walls on the Hines and Rakai ones are built out of those concrete blocks, whereas Tynwald's not. coat concrete was that porous concrete with little holes in it. So Timwall's a different product. But my question was, for Steve, is it a plan or is it possible to somehow count who goes through those pools or the people who administer it? I was thinking to have some numbers through the summer could be helpful looking forward, although I'd certainly hate to see the pools go, but I think it could be useful to have some idea of numbers using them.
So just through the mayor, very, very good question, and we're sort of thinking a few steps ahead. Staff are looking at actually hiring or purchasing counters for this season to actually count entrances into those pools, because that sort of is evidence-based to help with external funding applications. So hopefully we can get them in place for this season, but that's the aim.
Cool, yeah. Thank you.
Just got a question, Steve. The cost of bringing those two changing rooms up to standard, did you get a costing on that?
Through the mayor, no, we didn't get a costing. The recommendation is from our engineer is it's going to be cheaper to demolish and look at alternatives. If you read the report, there's a number of the walls are lacking in steel, lacking in concrete. By the time you do all that, you're just about back to a new building. A lot of the timber work is actually well past its best. So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll move the recommendation 2. Council provides funding for the demolition and support services to enable the pools at Rakaia and Hines to operate this summer.
Seconder, Councillor Brown, you still had a question coming, did you? Yeah. Seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Rawlinson. Open for debate. Liz?
That doesn't sound like, there's two parts of the recommendation that we have on the separate things, so they sound different to what Councillor Wilson has just read out. So I'm just confused. So on this report it says that Council provides funding for $27,800 for the demolition costs of the Hines and Rakaia pools, changing rooms, and to provide fencing and portaloos. And number 2, that is to be funded from the property reserve account. Is that the recommendation you saw? Yep. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I heard in front of me. So those points 1 and 2 and seconded. So that's clarified. Debate, councillors. If there being none, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Get carried. Thank you. Next item is number 6. And the Surface Water Strategy Progress Report. And Mr. Guthrie, welcome. Anything further to add, Andrew, or just go to questions on the report?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor, any questions before we... Councillor Cameron?
I have a question which is related to surface water strategy, but I don't think it's mentioned in this report. I've been reading them. Can I progress?
If it's linked to the report,
Yeah.
it would be good. Yeah,
It is. I've been reading the Methven Community Board minutes, the minutes from the 26th of July, which were adopted in September, with regard to the McKee Street flooding. And I noticed that one of the Community Board members, who's actually in the room, Dan, mentioned that they've had flooding there for 8 years and repeatedly brought that to council, and that's surface water flooding. Have we got it? Is that mentioned in this surface water strategy, or is there some message way to deal with that, please?
No, that particular issue won't be mentioned specifically in the strategy, but the strategy does talk about the interconnection between surface water, stormwater, stock water, the whole gamut of district resources. In terms of that particular issue, we're happy to respond to that and add it to our list of investigation sites.
How do we go? Can I just ask you, is that okay to do that then? Because
no, absolutely. We're actually we're following up on another one around the just to the side of the hall as well. So it's easy to add them into the mix.
That would be great, because I sense a significant amount of frustration with regards to that. Thank you
that
very much.
Is it roading or is it surface water?
Yeah, excuse me. Our new roading manager will be going up and investigating the site and catching up with Dan just to discuss that. As far as I know, we do have some plans with some curb and channel work and looking at the whole drainage of that area. But I'll leave our new roading manager to go up and assess it for himself and decide what further work may need to be done.
Do you know when that work would be completed and the flooding would be alleviated? Is there a time frame on the work?
I'll wait for our roading manager to go and assess that and determine that.
Right. So you would have that for the next Methven Community Board meeting, perhaps?
Yeah, we certainly could. Yes.
Right. Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
And that's next year, of course. Yep. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I go to page 11, number 5, and in the first line of number 5 it says monitor and review. I have a definition of review. What is the Chief Executive's definition of review in this context here?
To examine the matters that are subject of the review.
Mr. Mayor, I totally agree with the answer, and personally I have spoken with a number of councillors and they have little aspects that they would like to review. I also have aspects that I'd like to review in depth, and with your permission, after questions, I would like to move a recommendation, which is a number 2, that council workshops the surface water strategy in the new year. And the reason for that would be to be any annual plan funding to be added or deleted, as whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and happy to take that addition to the recommendation at the appropriate time. And as you say, item number 5, it does say that the plan would be reviewed every 3 years. So it's been about 3 years or slightly more, but pretty close to it. So it'd be an opportune time as long as the councillors agree. So we can look at that shortly. Councillor Lovett?
I quite agree about the workshopping, but you go through here and there's a lot of actions. They intertwine with each other and, you know, and haven't been tasked yet. But after our workshop, is it possible to sort of go out district by district with some workshops with people and just get their feeling on some of these waterways and drains, because there's confusion out there. What is a drain? You know, what is a water race? And we're looking at biodiversity as well, and we might be able to solve a lot of these issues if we actually ask them to come along and get a few questions going and find out all the biodiversity and everything else and tick some of these boxes off. And if you started off at the coast and worked your way up and get involvement with communities, I think we could make progress. It's something that probably hasn't been done for many, many years, and it would be goodwill with the district, I think, you know, if that is possible to do.
Yes, so through the Mayor, the strategy clearly talks about working with existing stakeholders and identifying those groups, and obviously trying to harvest that information and their understanding of the local context. It's unfortunate though that sort of work is extremely resource intense. And I'd have to say we've had quite a few challenges over the last 2.5 years. It's been a bit of a strange few years. So that's certainly something we can look at to get those actions relating to that specific area a bit more advanced.
Especially with some of the water races closing and stuff, and I think if you got a district together, they could actually tell you what they don't need or what's important to them, and you could cover off, you know, quite a lot of things on here in one go and reevaluate that.
Yeah, look, I agree with the councillor. The only comment I would make is that a lot of the strategy, a lot of the actions within the strategy are actually, there's quite a bit of tension between some of them. Some of them are wanting you to do something here, and something is wanting you to do something over here, and they're not entirely compatible. But the sweet spot is trying to get them all to work. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I see we've fallen well behind our program that we had. The question to the Chief Executive is, are we putting any more resources into this to try and catch up to what we originally outlined we would hope to achieve?
Thank you, Councillor. I think in the conclusion of the review that has been, I guess, signalled as part of that workshop, we will need to turn our mind to resources because one of the impediments to achieving all that we would have liked over the last few years has been resource constraints. So I have no doubt that in the conclusion of the workshop and review process, we will need to turn our mind to resources required to achieve whatever the outcome of that review is.
Supplementary, I think it is timely that we looked at some of the strategy. I see we're promoting environmental planting on water races. Well, if we want to close water races, that's got to be well and truly decided which water races we're going to keep to environmentally plant rather than the ones that are going to be closed. So I think the sooner we have the workshop, the better.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, if I may, that's the exact sort of tension I'm talking about, because we're trying to do one thing, but we also have to have regard for other stuff as well. So,
if we agree to have the workshop, which would be the motion, February, is that a timely manner to be ready for a workshop in February? Okay, thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Or would someone like to move? Councillor Mackay, and with the addition.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move, if you go to councillors, go to page 10, I'd like to move 1, that the council receives the surface water strategy progress report to 30th of June 2021, and 2, that council workshops the surface water strategy in the new year.
There was one, number 2 there already, which the progress report was provided to key stakeholders. Do you wish that to happen or not?
Well, in answering your question, if I may?
Yes.
Answering your question. I don't think some of the stakeholders would like the answers of no action, intertwined, lack of action. I don't think they'd like that. And I think we've got to try and get it sorted and fixed up so we can actually show that what hasn't been actioned can be actioned or has a cost to it. And I think there's too many variables in this to take the stakeholders. I think they'd laugh at us.
Yeah. So item number 1 and 2, the 2 that's there is removed, yeah, and the new 2 is, as you just said. Councillor Cameron?
I'll second that, but I have a counter. Can I make a comment?
If the speaker wants to speak, the motion can go after the mover, I should say.
Do we have an obligation to report to the key stakeholders, regardless of whether we like the material that we're reporting or otherwise, when we have a plan in place to address the gaps? I just think leaving it out is trivial and could be provocative, and if you leave it in, what the heck, it is what it is, you know.
If I may, I think we probably do have a sort of a moral obligation to keep them updated.
I mean, there's obfuscation, no point obfuscating about it. It is. So I would, if I can do a counter.
Yeah, Councillor, you just seconded that we don't report.
Well, I wanted to get my words out. So I think
possibly shouldn't have seconded the motion, but.
Yeah. Oh, the mover
Angus, could you turn your light on? Angus, you might have a solution if you agree.
If you were to come back to the mover and ask that we leave that in, yes, I would agree.
That is the question. You agree to that? So, Councillor Cameron, you're moving it with it in, seconding it with it.
Yes, please.
In, right.
Thank you. Thanks.
So there's 3 points in the recommendation now. Councillor Letham, open to debate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to speak in favour of the motion and including reporting to stakeholders. I think it's vital that we do, no matter what's in the report.
Yeah. Any speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Mackay, right, a reply.
I would like that when we go to the stakeholders, we can actually say this is what the report was, we've workshopped it, and this is how we see the solution. That's why I was agreeable to Councillor Cameron's point. I think we have to show some form of action to the stakeholders.
Yeah. There are some items in there which have been completed. Yeah, some haven't, but some have. Yeah. We'll put the Comments?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. The way the resolution currently sits is this, we would probably interpret that to circulate this report to the stakeholders. I think perhaps the mover is indicating that he would like this report to go out after a workshop with action and changes. So we could just to clarify that for the purposes of how we're to respond.
For clarification.
In answer to your question to me, Mr. Chief Executive, yeah, okay, if you want to mail it out, I'm quite happy. But we're going to have to provide some answers why things haven't been done very shortly, and hopefully that's in the new year, as quick as.
It could be as simple as being in a covering letter attached to the report. Yep. Thank you. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next item is Three Waters reform. Next steps, item number 7. Page 23. And Hamish, this is your report, if you'd like to speak to it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a response to the invitation to partner with other councils in taking some action against the current form of the Three Waters reform. That council discussed at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and this report is a follow-up to that, recommending indeed that Council does join with others who have reservations as a way of expressing both this Council's deep concerns at the mandating of the reform package, and also giving effect to an overwhelming response that we've all received from the community, also expressing concerns at the reform. So it recommends that we do contribute $15,000 to a fund to work in concert with other like-minded councils.
Thank you for that. Any questions, councillors? I'll move the Councillor Falloon.
I was about to move the recommendation.
Well, I'll move it if you'd like to second.
Yep.
Open for debate. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I think it's wise that we move this recommendation, and I think we've heard from the public. I think we ended up with about 400 emails from people who were against the Three Waters reform, and we've heard had a lot of phone calls and been stopped in the street about it. So I think it's wise that we participate in this campaign.
Just councillors, we were talking this morning and thinking that there was a third part to this recommendation, and it's been emailed around. Councillor Fleet, have you got it in front of you, which you could, being the second of the motion, if you'd like to read it, which I could probably pull up myself, being the mover of it. I've got it there.
Hang on, I just pulled it up. This is the one that council approved joining the multi-council.
I've got it. It's item number 3. 1 and 2 is written in front of you. That in item point number 3 in the recommendation, that council notes its opposition to the current proposal for reform of the Three Waters assets. But if reform is to proceed, council's preference is the Wakakatahi type model, whereby council continues to manage the assets with funding support from the Crown, with investment decided on in the merits of the various business cases. That is to be added as item number 3. I'm the mover. Happy with that? You being the second to Councillor Floon, if you're happy with that.
Very happy.
Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I oppose the motion. The first two, I agree. The only way that we've got any hope of postponing, changing, stalling this reform is to do it through legal channels, and that's what the first two motions are. As far as promoting a Wakatahi type, we all know how difficult it is to get money out of Wakatahi for projects that we want to do. Wakatahi is funded by petrol tax, road user charges, etc. how do we propose the money for a Wakatahari type thing to service the three waters? I think it's just that complicated. It's just going to be impossible. So I totally oppose that. Leave the first two as it is. Us trying to convince the government to change what they consider necessity reform is a waste of time. They've made up their mind. They're not going to alter. They've brought in this committee to perhaps twiddle around the edges on the governments. They're going to stick to what they propose. It's just a way of trying to appease the councils that oppose them. Anyway, I'd like to move an amendment that the third note on there be deleted and the motion just proceed as it originally is in the recommendation.
To save you the prospect of doing that, where I could put the motions in three put the motion in three parts. If you were happy with that.
That'll do. Right, yes.
I can, without amending anything. Councillor Letham.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to support Councillor Wilson. I'm happy with recommendations 1 and 2, but on the very grounds that Councillor Wilson mentioned, I think we'll end up with a debate about Wakakatahi rather than a debate about the water reforms and how we should go about them. So, yes, if you're happy to do them in pieces, I'm happy to.
Okay, next up is Councillor Cameron.
Yes, I agree with Stuart. I think we should go in with the blue sky aspiration that we are not going to have the three waters mandated to us as per the suggestion from the government, and we should support the fighting fund, so to speak. You know, if Wix have said that we need to invest, we've got down in our 10 years of 73 million, I think we heard this morning, and Wix have suggested we need to spend 491 million on capital over the next 10 years. Well, there's clearly a major disconnect. If we go the Wakakatahi, are we not sort of, is the Zone 4 not already a Wakakatahi type of model where they'd give us an allocation and address our water over a period of time? It's not all going to be done at once, is it? And what you look at State Highway 1, we're held up at the roundabout down there already with the Wakakatahi model. Look at the bridge, how long we waited for a second bridge with Wakakatahi. So it's a queuing type of system and it's a submitting type of system. I think if our district is worth, if we need to spend the money, we need to get a grant from the government and we need to spend the money.
I'll just take clarification from the Chief Executive on one of the comments you made.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on the difference. The current reform proposal has no suggestion of government money. So the current reform proposal is not Wakakatahi. It has no government contribution at all. The funding is all via debt and the consumers of the water.
Okay.
The appeal of the Wakakatahi model, in contrast, is that there is a mechanism to attract government subsidy for the asset under consideration. Sure. So Wakakatahi is not the same thing as the entity model.
I stand corrected. I got carried away. Yeah. But I think if we all come down to it, we're still paying the money, whether we're paying the debt repayment or whether we're paying the tax, which is paying Wakakatahi or the petrol, or the excise tax or whatever. But I don't support the motion of suggesting a Wakakatahi type model.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, as you know, I've been totally in favour of the legal channel for quite some time, and I'm fully supportive of 1 and 2. Recently, there has been, additional to that, another committee set up, or task force, or whatever you like, by the government, and it includes the Mayor of Auckland and the Mayor of Christchurch. Their councils are publicly against what the status quo is. I believe that it's only right and proper that we offer, as Ashburton District Council, a solution to that group of people. And knowing that they are publicly against what we have on the table at the moment, I see that it's good for us to offer an alternative way of getting the funds to look after the water and wastewater and stormwater of New Zealand. I think this is a multi-pronged attack on what we have on the table at the moment. That's why I'll be supporting all three.
Councillor Lovett.
And I completely agree with Angus. He took the words out of my mouth. We're fighting on one hand, and we need to be offering solutions going forward. And we owe it to our public of our town. We should be supporting these other councils. We need to go in force to make them kind of listen. We just can't give them an open ticket just to box on with what they want to do.
Any further speakers for or against? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly been in favour of the amended part with number 3. The reason for me is that I'm certainly not happy the way it's been done, but let's pick a fight we can win.
I'll give the right of reply, and I agree with the 3 recommendations there. We need to show that we're not happy with what has been mandated. Councillor Rawlinson, did you have a comment for or
I was
against?
going to make a comment too.
Okay, we'll do that, and I'll finish my right of reply.
I certainly agree with 1 and 2, but my only fear with 3 would be that we're sidetracking a conversation by joining in with the other councils, and the Waka Kotahi model could come into a discussion at a later point. It's a long way to go in this, but I just have a fear that it could sidetrack things if it was in there.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to present a solution, I believe, to the working group, and the Waka Kotahi model, as we've workshopped. We agree that most of us that was the solution to what we've been given so far. So hence I supporting the 3 parts, but I'm going to put them in 3. Put the motion and put them in 3 parts. And recommendation number 1, that council approves joining the multi-council campaign to convince the government to alter its intention to proceed with legislation that will compel councils to transfer the Three Waters assets into the ownership and or operational control of another legal entity without the agreement of an affected council to that transfer. I'm in favour. All those in favour please say aye. Against? Carried. Number 2, that council notes that the cost to the Ashburton District Council to participate in the campaign fund is $15,000. This fund to be held in trust and administered by the Timaru District Council. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour please say aye. Carried. And item number 3, that council notes its opposition to the current proposal for the reform of the Three Waters assets, but if reform is to proceed, council's preference is the Waka Kotahi type model, whereby council continues to manage the assets with funding support from the Crown, with investment decided on in the merits of the various business cases. I'm in favour of that. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour please say aye. Against? Carried. Noted against. Noted.
Yes, please.
All 3 parts have been carried. Thank you. Next item of business is number 8, Community Events Grants Christmas Market. Page 32. Welcome, Claire. Anything further to add? It's really reasonably self-explanatory, I think.
Yes, through the chair. This was a late entry, and this has come through because we do have extra funds in that grant that were not allocated because we were under-subscribed through the first 2 rounds. This was going to be for the Santa Parade, but the Santa Parade has had to be cancelled, so Carol Johns has still endeavoured to try and get a market going, and she is using the Tynwald Recreation Centre to run a Christmas market. There's also another activity running at the same time at the Tynwald Domain, so the Tynwald Domain's also trying to make the most out of this particular event and attract people to the Tynwald area at the same time.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Macmillan?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a question. So the funding won't be given on 2 conditions, so that they obviously need to complete their reporting,
yes,
and they also need to meet health and safety regulations.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Just correction there, COVID-19 regulations or health and safety regulations?
For all event grants, they need a health and safety plan, and for this particular event at this time, we're also asking for a COVID plan, and we have been supplied that.
Thank you. Councillor Rawlinson?
Just a question around the COVID with the new traffic light system. If they had 200 or 300 people turn up, do they still fit within the rules?
Within this area, they need to have people at least 1 metre apart. So they need to, Carol Johns will need to work out how many people they can have within the area of the market, and at any one time they'll need that particular figure to be in the entrance. She has, they have one entry, so they can control numbers through that particular area. So she's done a little bit of work around people numbers, and we'll have to keep an eye on those numbers for that market, so there will be an in and out flow.
Yeah, because I could see a difficulty if you had a sunny day and 500 people or 1,000 people turn up, which is a distinct possibility. They could have a few issues.
Yeah.
Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Had we granted funding for the Centre Parade?
Not this year.
Not this year.
In
Okay.
previous years we have, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Claire, just a clarification, please. This is not on Tynwald Reserve Board grant. It's basically next to it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Question time over. Someone would like to sponsor the recommendation? Councillor Cameron, seconder. Councillor Brown. Open for debate. Councillor. No further debate. I'll put the motion. I am in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Claire. Next up is just about 1:45, so we'll welcome up Dan and Sonia to the table, and you're giving us a update on Methven Community Board activities, and you have a PowerPoint, so if we go through the PowerPoint then we can go to questions after that. Thanks, Dan.
There you go. Good afternoon, Mayor, councillors and staff. Fold up here. So we'd come to the council and give you a bit of update on what Community Board's been up to over the last year. And we sort of decided to come about 6 months ago, but the way the year's been and my life's been a bit all over the place, I've had to keep cancelling, and I thank Philippa for putting up with me and rescheduling me for, I think, every meeting for the last 6 months. So I've finally got here. And I've done a bit of a presentation. Hopefully it won't take too long to get through. So the first thing that I'm going to present on is our Methven Community Board discretionary fund. So over the last year, the last financial year, you'll see I've got a bit of a list up there of what we've given money to. And so just give you a second to have a bit of a look at that list. And I'll just have a look at a couple of projects that we have given money to. One was the Methven walkway through their lines, Methven lines. We gave 27,600 to them in the last financial year. I've just got a couple of slides of some of the work they've done over the last few years, and we've given them close to 40,000 now for the last few years. So as you can see by the slides I got there, 40,000 doesn't go far when you try to buy material. So the lines have turned 40,000 with their volunteers, begging and borrowing machinery, and calling in favours, into what is a couple of $100,000 worth of work on the Methven walkway. I've only done a few photos just so you can see sort of thing. Obviously they did a lovely track through the cemetery. That's what it looks like at the moment. I know at last meeting passed to clean up the cemetery and reinstate that track, so I'm sure the Lions will be very impressed with that, and hopefully they can get back on track in time. So it's a great collaboration between the Methven Community Board providing funds and the Methven Lions getting out there and doing stuff in the community, and it's been quite good the last couple of years with COVID, of the amount of people getting out and walking when we're in lockdown. So it's absolutely fantastic. The next one is Kids Methven, the Methven skate park. We've given money to Kids Methven over the last few years trying to progress the skate park, and this year they finally capped that off, and got a few pictures there of the lovely skate park. I'm sure you've all heard of it. And another asset for Methven that's well utilised. And obviously in the photos there this morning, all the kids are at school, so otherwise it is full of kids. That's the bowl, if any of you are keen to go have a crack at it.
Righto, that was the Methven grant. So the next thing is in the LTP, there was concern about Methven's growth, and it's the same as that throughout the rest of the district and why it's going out through New Zealand. And so we just have a bit of a look at Methven here. There's a few subdivisions going on. So the first one is Camrose, been going on for quite a few years. You'll see there's 228 sections in there. That's progressing quite well in the sanitary stage after stage, and they're certainly behind the 8 ball getting it done. The next one is Time Stream, which was done probably 18 months ago. Most of the people in there that are trying to build can't get builders. That's the issue with that one, otherwise it'd be full of houses. One of the next newer ones is, and bigger sections is Karaki View. That's got 20 sections and they're progressing quite well, and there's a few houses starting to go up in there. And the latest one here is Elmwood, and they've just started the earthworks on that, and that's got 30 sections, and obviously they'll get title on that probably mid next year. Depends who you talk to. The developer will tell you January, but reality will be July. So that's a bit of a look at the subdivisions going on here in Methven. If we just look there, so out of those 294 sections, there's only 8 for sale. They have all sold. And then I, after I'd done this, then realised I've even forgot the subdivision. There's another one, Equine Estate, with 20 sections that I actually forgot about, and they're all sold as well. So if you wanted to buy a section and build a house in Methven now, you got a choice of 8 sections. So apart from looking like a great big real estate pitch, what was the point of that? So we just look at the LTP thing that's in the LTP, and you'll see 2021, they're saying there was 1,941 people in Methven, and then the plan in 2048, 2,410. So I know they're going off statistics 2018 data, and anyone that's used that data, it's frustrating. It's just so wrong anyway. But this was the concern from the people in Methven, that if you're using this data for your infrastructure for the next 27 years, a quick calculation tell you you're going to reach that 2048 target in 23. So in 2023, you're going to reach the target that you had in the LTP for 27 years' time. So we know that these are reviewed every 3 years as part of the LTP plan, and it'll get updated. So it's not end of the world stuff. I'm just here highlighting that not frustration, but the people in Methven were concerned about that through the LTP process, about infrastructure and going forward if you're using incorrect data. And at the 2 public meetings, I think Tony and Paul actually explained the data and explained it very well, and that was very good to get through to some people that it is updated every 3 years. It's not like this is the plan to 2048 and we're stuck with it. So hopefully there will be some more work done on that next LTP. Just another update on the Methven NZ stuff. So we got some money from the Methven Community Board, and we've updated our website. And we sort of added a bit of a service directory in there so to add things. We did quite a bit of work around Methven Eats and the restaurants in Methven, just especially with COVID. You know, a lot of them are struggling a bit and carrying on. And Methven Eats is another website that's set up by somebody during the very first lockdown to promote the restaurants, what's open, what's closed, just because it gets so frustrating. Then a big part of the website upgrade was to do an events calendar. So from our area, it's sort of twofold. One is it's for the people in Methven to know that events going on, like cafes and restaurants. Quite often you get an event of 200 or 300 people. For some reason the cafes don't know about it, and they get slammed and don't have staff on. And so it's A, for that, B, for people that want to come and have a look at events or do an event, just somewhere for it to be promoted. And we do have some money to promote those events. But unfortunately, we were geared up to do it 2 months ago, and it'll come to my next point. With the events, so many of them have been cancelled. We had the rodeo. I was working with the Harley Davidson to have 450 Harleys there for a conference. There was the fete that was meant to be last Saturday. All these events are huge events for Methven, all outside people coming. I mean, the rodeo attracts about 8,000 people. The town is absolutely chockers. The Harleys, they were all staying here for 3 days. 450 people lost in accommodation. The Fate, they attract a good crowd. This is no different to anywhere else in the district, anywhere else in New Zealand. It's just pointing out that it's tough. This is money that the community will not get, and there's going to be some shortcomings, and we just have to keep going forward. So on that note, it was just a bit of an update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dan, for the update. It's really good to tell us what's happening up Methven. It's obviously she's all go up there, isn't it? And plenty of sections. Well, it's not the plenty of sections sold. The building has comment that probably the main things that would affect council for the houses being built would be the water and the sewer. And there's projections of how much more capacity can go in for the sewer. And water, we're spending $3 million up there, or more than that. It's probably about 4 or 5 over the next couple of years to upgrade the filtration system, and also the putting the 2 big tanks into water capacity, and for storage of water, and also putting the water meters in where we'll find the leaks, which will then, instead of it being leaking, it'll be able to be used by other houses. So council is spending a reasonable amount of money up in Methven, and if the numbers aren't right projected forward, well, they won't be right, but they'll be corrected as time goes on, because in 2 years' time we redo the LTP, so the next census is done by then or not, but at least we'll have more actual data to progress it. So if it's not right, it's not right, but we'll get it right. Good questions now, and I also mentioned the hot pools is up there now, which is another attraction for Methven, which is a great asset, which was opened last week, yeah. So it's looking through there, it was really, really good. Caroline.
Yes, the hot pools are really great, and a friend of mine went there in the weekend and said it was marvellous. Dan, I think you're right with regards to the census. I think that's just the quality of that information is going to deteriorate over time. Do you suggest an alternative, like Methven's a small village? Is there a way we could actually do a practical count that would have some credibility for the planning purposes of the council without involving the census? Because I know that that was an issue in the long-term plan and the consultation. People were unhappy with the census growth rate because it obviously directly impacted their rates increases and things.
Yes, and to be fair, I'm not sure if it was Paul or Tony at the meeting did explain that it's common to use the census data, but it's not. You don't have to. You can use other versions, and perhaps that should be a way of looking at the future. I mean, I could do my quick calculation. We were told there's 960 houses on water connections. Multiply that by 2.5, which is meant to be 2.5 in a house, tells you 2,400 people live in Methven. A quick calculation like that's without me being
1,900, so
expert.
That's about 30% out already, isn't it?
Yeah. If you start that far behind exponentially, that problem's going to get worse.
That's right. Yeah, we need to. I think that's a good point that you raise, and I think it's something that needs to be reviewed.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think you might be a little bit optimistic with your population. Houses being built. A lot of these new some of these new subdivisions, land bankers buy quite a block, and to build 293 or 300 houses in a couple of years is pretty enthusiastic. Our projected figures are over a longer term. We might get a big spike. It's madness at the moment over in Tynwald. The houses that are going up are ridiculous. There's heaps of them, but I can see it'll taper off. And even though the 300 sections sold, I could see new subdivisions around us. It takes quite a few years to progress your way through every house. So I think rather than a huge spike, you will find it will perhaps get a steady climb over 5 years rather than 2.
So a quick, from what Caroline was saying, a quick calculation, we're close to 2,400 now, and your figures for 48 are 2,411. So I don't think I'm out with my figures there. We only need 11 more people. Technically, that's not correct calculation, because some people don't have, some houses don't have people, but that's the sort of how close we're talking to what it's actually going to be.
Councillor Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then really, if you look back over the last 40 years, that's as far as I can go back here, smaller places like Methven and Mount Somers and Staveley really didn't grow that much at all. I've been involved with camera roads for the last 10 years. In the first 10 years, nothing really happened. So all of a sudden it happens. So it's really hard to place in the glaze and bowl just to find exactly what it is. But like you said and what Neil said as well, it is figures being picked out somewhere, and it will be changing in next years. But I mean, it's not, even a couple of years ago, Medfin didn't grow much at all. Is that correct?
It was growing quite well percentage-wise, but you're talking about coming off a small base, so it's easy to get the percentage a little bit out. It was growing reasonable for the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, Camrose is taken off before this new boom at the moment, so it's taken off. Then you've got the new boom, so I think it is growing faster than what people actually think.
Everyone was expecting.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to ask, do you know where the people are coming from? Are they relocating from Ashburton or nearby to build up in Methven? And are they full-time residents who are building, or are they holiday homes just for part of the year?
So, not being scientific, but all the research and the work I've done around it, I can't find one single thing. It's just a cross mix. There's new young families, there's people retiring. There is a couple of people from Christchurch have land banked something. We're talking about 25 sections between a lot of them. The rest of the sections are sold to individuals. It's just such a mix. And I think Steve Fabish was telling me the other day that they've quite a few from Auckland have brought places from the data he's seen, brought places in Methven. So it's quite a mix. It's not just one thing.
Councillor Cameron.
Well, it's a very pretty part of the world, Dan. You can see why they'd want to come down from Auckland to stay there. And regardless of where the people come from or where they originate, they're still going to be, those houses still have rates attached to them.
And we need to provide the services that council needs to provide for the houses that are being built. That's our role. So, no more questions. Thank you, Dean, and making good progress up there, as I said before. And just looking at the monies that you get and you dish out to the other organisations like the Lions, and the multiplier effect, which the community gets for nothing really by that little bit of seed money. It not only happens in Methven, it happens in other places of the district as well. But it's a good example of how a small amount of money can balloon out and everyone helping to make assets better. So thanks for what you're doing up here. We do appreciate it. The community appreciates that, and Sonia as well, and the rest of the board members. And hopefully we discuss the Mackie Street flooding, and we'll have a report back to the next community board as to what's going to happen. So fingers crossed that'll be there for then. So well done, and thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll be looking forward to that report once again. And thanks very much for listening to me, and hope everyone has a good break over Christmas. Thank you.
And the same to you, and we'll see you at our wind-up function in the next week or two, whenever that is. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Sonia. Moving on now, councillors, to the Mayor's report. There's just a couple of items I'll just highlight. One was Canterbury Water Management Strategy at the Mayoral Forum. Talked about aligning the zone committees closer with the update of that the regional plan rewrite, and using the local communities for the local solutions. So that has been raised at Mayoral Forum, and it's more of a point at Environment Canterbury to use the local people for those feeding into it. And the other one was the Regional Transport Committee, which was another committee, and the Civil Defence and Emergency Management. And there was a paper presented there by Mr. Rouse, who was sending basically outlining the fact that Ashburton needs a new second bridge because of connectivity with Tynwald and Ashburton, for safety reasons, civil defence regions, and also connecting the island with when the bridge was severed, that it was a risk to life. And also looking at the roads, which are the connector roads, which used to be state highways, which are not now, is either giving them back to the state highway or getting a 95% fare rate on them. So that report was accepted by the Civil Defence Emergency Management Committee, and letters being sent to the Prime Minister, the Minister of Transport, and the CEO of Wakakatahi suggesting that those projects go under urgency into 21-22, which is this year's National Land Transport Plan, and they receive the appropriate funding as well. So that letter will be, if it hasn't gone, it'll be very close to have gone. Probably has gone by now from Civil Defence, and CDEM have sent that letter. So we await that response in the new year. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. That sounds like it would be really good progress if that went through. But did he suggest both those roads, Thompson's Track and the ARG?
Yeah.
Or both?
Yeah.
Good.
If you'd like, I could forward you a copy of that report if you wanted. It is on the CDEM website. Though the whole agenda, which it's in the agenda. But if you want to do, I could send you that part of it, or the whole agenda, and you can flick through it. It's probably 80, 90, 100 pages of it, but in totality, not that report. Any further questions? Councillor Mackay.
Two things, Mr. Mayor. Can I please thank you as Neil Brown 2 years, 4 months ago in saving the water feature in the Ashburton town. I went and closely inspected it on a number of occasions, and I think it looks wonderful. And I can remember at the time that, knowing your procedure around the council table here, you led the fight for council to change its mind. So those councillors that supported you that day, I also thank. It's great to see it there. On another matter, just on emergency management, how safe is the Ashburton River with the repairs that have been made for the town of Ashburton?
Is that around the stop banks?
Well, we see that they're busy putting stop banks back in place, repairs and that sort of thing. I understand there was a meeting last night, so we should be fully up to speed on whether we've got the protection or what percentage of protection there is for the town if something happens over the Christmas period.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's quite a simple question, really.
Yeah, it is. I understand that the stop banks that were protecting Ashburton Township weren't damaged, but just someone likes to need to go off. Stuart, just take them off. Angus, go on now. And
country stop banks, because there has been some opinion expressed by people by Federated Farmers Provincial Chairman, and that in the rural areas, if they hadn't soaked up so much moisture that it would from the rivers, that it would have ended up putting more pressure on the town bank. And I was just wondering how those banks were going, because it all fits one picture really. There's a level of protection, there's repairs going on. I just wondered where it was all at.
Okay. We do have a councillor or councillors on the River Rating District who may have attended the meeting last night. If they were there, they may like to update. I wasn't at it. Who was on that? Unsure, but we'll find out who the councillor is and ask for a report back from Environment Canterbury on the state of that meeting last night. Councillor Cameron.
I went for a drive up on the weekend up to the gorge, and I've just read your report now that you've sent in a letter, which we've seen. Thank you. Trying to get some sort of traffic management around the Rakaia Gorge Bridge when the Rakaia Bridge is actually closed. Have you had a response yet for that? Is there anything else we can do to influence that? Because it's quite a treacherous sort of area up there, as well as being obviously a one-lane bridge.
When you say treacherous, what's treacherous?
Well, curly roads, narrow bridge, like it's quite a. You wouldn't want too many cars on that to be at risk of traffic accidents. It's busy.
Will only get busier as time goes on as well. But
you sent the letter, but is it too early to get a response?
I think I sent the letter out to you to say that it's okay to go, and then it will be sent. But I also raised that at the Regional Transport Committee. There was a lot of meetings on that same day when I was in Christchurch, and raised it with Wakakatahi who were there, and they, the person who was attending, agreed to look into it as well, and letters also being sent. So, yeah. Good. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What are we meant to do with that ECAN climate change risk assessment? I've 255 pages of, I thought it would have been scientific. There's a lot of mythology and sort of stuff in there that it's not only, how can I put it? Well, I thought it would have been a brief scientific document that states what can happen and what we can do about it. But there's pages and pages and pages there that doesn't make sense to me and doesn't make sense to anybody. So what are we meant to do with it? It must have cost a fortune to access.
It's for your information, and do with it as you wish, but it's looking to the future. Well, there's facts in there what's happening now, but looking to the future, it could be stargazing. Don't know, we'll know when we get there, I suppose.
Why is there so much one-sided mythology in it? I thought we were a Christian country, and I could put a Christian point of view into that report that would contradict a lot of the assumptions that they've made in there, that beyond belief some of the stuff we're served up with now.
I don't think the whole country is Christian, but there's other religions here as well. Let's not get into that. But take your comments on board. The report is lengthy and detailed, and you believe it or not, but it is what it is. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on the calendar. We had the youth employment workshop, and we kind of missed the last portion of that. Will that be scheduled for some time, or is that...
I think the update I've had there was the young fellow from local government, New Zealand, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, was going to zoom in, but his last day is today.
Okay.
And it's been scheduled for his replacement to pick up where that was left off. I think that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. The other one, you haven't got it in your calendar, but I know you helped turn on the Christmas tree lights the other night. I think it was Saturday night. We saw the video of you doing that. Did the other tree lights, are they on as well, or just the Christmas tree lights?
Yeah, no, the all the lights are back on. The on the trees, they're all on. The Christmas trees lit up, and I understand they come on when the street lights come on.
Right.
So all back to the way it was. Yeah, we turned the lights on for the Christmas tree that night, and Hoops, with his fundraising venture, auctioned it off with a blessing, and the Murney family paid a considerable amount of money to have the privilege of turning them on, where in the past you and I have done it for digs. So yeah, it was a good fundraiser for a good cause. So what was your other question? I think that was that. Great, Councillor Cameron.
Just a question also on the climate change report, which indeed is 255 pages, so it's a lengthy document. I look at the workshop invitees, and I don't know if these people attended or not, but we've got Ashburton District Council, Ashburton District Council Biodiversity Advisory Group, Ashburton Economic Recovery Advisory Group, Ashburton Museum. We go down to Electricity Ashburton. So presumably we had some input into this development of this report. I would hope some of those groups attended. And the reason for that, I'm assuming, is so that we implement some of these things in our district, or review it, or use them for some reason or other. Otherwise, it's an exercise in futility, and we shouldn't have been involved in it, which, you know, I wonder if it does need some review, because I don't know what the cost of it was, but I presume it was funded by ECAN.
Merrill Forum, I think, funded it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, which is from all the councils of Canterbury. And they'll use it for whatever wishes they need to use it for. And it's available for whoever wants to use it. It's not. Yeah,
well, I'm just responding to Stuart's question, or his comment that how are we going to use it, and the response back was, we don't know how we're going to use it, or whether it will be used at all. Yeah, that was all.
It's there to be used if anyone does need to use it. Any further questions? If not, I'll move that we receive the Mayor's report. Second it. Councillor Lovett. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Well, that takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting, I think. Done everything we're full of it? We have. Thank you, Dan, Sonia, for attending. Adam. And we will move into committee in a minute or so.